the question this morning, I'm sure many are asking, are why don't the Glazers alter their dividend policy to coincide with success on the field? That would surely make a better idea than the way they're going about it at the moment. Let me explain. I'll put some meat in the bones of this, but you know the situation anyway, Simon. Manchester United's yearly accounts have been announced. The club facing net loss of £115.5 million for 21-22. Net debt is up by £94.5 million. The wage bill has shot up by £61 million and sits at £384 million. That's currently the biggest in Premier League history.
Yep.
And then when it comes down to how much did it cost to sack Solskjaer and cancel, if you like to use the phrase, Ralph Rangnick, that came to £24.7 million. And yet, dividends for the year rose by £10.7 million. The Glazers took £33.6 million in dividends. The increase due to a deferred dividend payment in the pandemic. Nonetheless, you took the money out.
So let me frame that properly for you. First of all, they didn't take £33 million because they only own 70% of the club, right? So they took 70% of that £33 million. The other 30% goes to the other shareholders as a result of a dividend policy. So they didn't get £33 million. They got 70% of it because that's their shareholding stake.
Well, £33.6 million went out into shareholders'
Into shareholder dividends, right? Which is a policy that most floated businesses have. The second part of it is it wasn't an annual payment. They deferred a payment. They have a policy that pays a certain amount every year, and they didn't take a payment in 2021. So they've carried it across and paid it in 21-22. Now, you then look at the structure of Man United. First of all, Man United Supporters Trust have virtually no influence over what the dividend policy of Man United will be, and the Glazers will pay no attention to it whatsoever. The optics of it
But shouldn't they?
Well, should they? Should the players that are drawing...
Well, it's a decent point. The Supporters Trust is saying we
you...
believe dividends should only be paid when there's both financial success and success on the field.
Well, there's two kinds of financial...
There's two kinds
of financial success. If you look at the EBITDA earnings of Manchester United, they'll tell you they've made £81 million profit. Right? If you then factor in the post-EBITDA, which is the depreciation of the tax liabilities, they'll have lost...
What's EBITDA?
Losses.
What does that mean?
EBITDA means earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortisation. So you take away
of course it does.
You bring down the value of players, you bring down the cost implications of depreciation of fixed assets and so on and so forth. It's proper accountancy, and they have to trigger certain levels of EBITDA to make sure that they don't cost themselves more money when they're going back to Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan for the borrowings that they've got. I would suggest that whilst the optics are poor, and they are poor, when you've got a football team that doesn't play very well on the pitch and isn't performing very well economically, right, then you're going to have this situation where it gives the Glazer-hating fan base that doesn't matter how much profit they make and doesn't matter how successful perhaps they are on the pitch, by their own words, the Glazers are not for them. Right? It doesn't matter what the Glazers do now, because the Glazers bought a football club in a mechanism that doesn't appeal to the Man United fan base. And more than anything, I haven't finished yet, more than anything, they have not achieved any success on the football pitch and didn't use their own money. 20 million quid. Let's have it right, Jim. 20 million quid in dividends. I don't care whether they get it or they don't, because I have no vested interest in Man United. But what about the 400 million quid that those slobs on the pitch are getting paid to achieve the outcomes that they're producing? Why isn't the narrative about the 400 million pounds that they're paying to players that clearly aren't performing? What I would have support with the Man United Supporters Trust on is not the paltry 5% of revenues that go out in dividends, and actually less than that, 3%, is the diabolical football decisions that the Glazers have made. Because they have been so profligate in their spending pattern. They've spent more money. They've spent £1.6 billion in transfer fees since Alex Ferguson left. More money than anybody else. They've now got the biggest wage bill. They're no longer hiding behind a profitable football club, because ultimately the loss of revenues from not being in the Champions League of any substance and their ultimate underperformance in the Premier League.
That's it. But the fans look at the Glazers and think you've botched it right across the board. But Simon, here's the deal. Right. These fans, like the fellow you met in the boat, whoever he is, say I'm a member of the Manchester United Supporters Trust, in no way am I disrespect to them. They'll go to the hole in the wall today, hoping they can get 50 quid out, maybe a couple of £100, might go out for a meal tonight. Manchester United finished 6th last season.
It happens, doesn't it? Football teams, they have cycles.
The Glazers and others dipped in and helped themselves to 33.6 million quid. Was that the time to do it? When you're only going to antagonise these fans?
Well, they're not really in the business of doing exactly and precisely what the fans want them to do. Because if you
just said it's bad optics.
Of course it's bad optics.
So why do it?
But there's a lot of bad optics in this world.
But why
isn't
do
there?
it?
We live amongst bad optics. If you want to present something in a certain way, that you know as well as I do, that if Man United were more successful, this argument would dull down.
Of course.
But even if they were more successful...
That's the point.
But hang on. Even if they were more successful and profitable, do you still believe that these fans would not be saying, well, I still don't think you should be taking dividends? Of course they would be still saying it, because they loathe the Glazers. It doesn't matter what the Glazers... Do I think the Glazers are great owners? No, I don't think they're great owners. But do I think that anything the Glazers have taken out of this football club has stopped this football club from doing anything? No, it hasn't. What's stopped the football club from doing it is poor management decisions and poor player performances.
But you include the Glazers in that.
Of course.
The Glazers appointed Ole. The Glazers appointed Ranić.
No,
24.7 million they paid these two.
The Glazers appointed Ed Woodward, and Ed Woodward made those decisions. So Ed Woodward was culpable, and in
the
a position...
Glazers signed them off.
Of course, no. Well, of course they did, but they gave... You don't... With due respect, it's like having a football manager. You don't give a football manager a job and pick his team for him. They gave Ed Woodward the control over the business, and their main focus was to make sure their share price is at a certain level, and they get their return on what they perceive their investment to be. And Man United fans will go, what bleeding investment? You put 200 million quid in, you've had that back tenfold, and you're geared it with debt. Well, everybody's in debt. The country's in debt. When you buy a house, you have a mortgage on it, you're in debt. But it's about what that debt can do or what it can stop you from doing. It stopped Man United from competing economically with no one.
Would Manchester United, Simon... this is
and
what
I'm not
it
making a
boils
case
down
full of
to.
Glazers. I just think this is nonsense.
Would they... How is it nonsense?
Because the optics of what people are doing is based upon their perception of the Glazers.
Simon, you would
20 million
concede
quid.
it's not the trying to
20
take
million quid.
33.6 million out of the club when they finished 6th last season because of all the appointments they made and the signings they signed off.
If they won the league and made profit, the argument would still be being raging.
No, it wouldn't.
Of course it would.
No, it wouldn't.
But hang on a second.
If they won the league, this would...
Have we not had the guys on here turn around saying, because we always say, this is what we say, you guys are only carping on because you ain't winning anything. And the first thing they say is, get rid of program. We've been against these owners. We've been green and gold or whatever it is since they walked through the door. We've loathed them since 2006.
You wouldn't be hearing this noise if United had won the Premier League last season.
But they won't tell you that, will they? We've had them on here. They've said to us, when we've said, the only reason you're moaning is because you ain't winning. And they turn around and go, no, it's not. We hate them. We hated them since 2006. So they can't have it both ways, can they?
The Glazers have cranked up the noise. That's where we're at. Of course they have.
The Glazers have a dividend. When you float a business on the stock market, what you do is you put a dividend policy.
They can't make a decent decision.
Well, depends what you think a decent decision is.
They can't make one.
Some people might think Eric Ten Hag is a decent decision. Some people might have thought Jose Mourinho was a decent decision. Some people might have thought David Moyes was a decent decision. We are living in a world where Liverpool, Manchester City and Chelsea aren't just waiting for Man United to come back and buy the Premier League. They're not going to sit there and say, I tell you what, you do what you want because you were the biggest club for 20 years. They've got different competition now. So the yards have become harder. But what I do advocate for is their decision-making process. Come on, now, I sat here for 2 years calling Ole Gunnar Solskjaer the unavoidable mistake that no one should have ever made. Right. And ultimately, they've made the decision.
It was never going to work.
Absolutely.
Soon as said it, you said it.
So
would Manchester United, on this day, September the 23rd, be a better-run club and be in better hands if the Glazers weren't there?
That's a difficult one because it depends who you put in there and what their motivations were. Can Man United... Two questions here. Can Man United afford...
Would they be in better hands if, say, Todd Bowley had bought them?
Well, don't know. Ask people like Gary Neville that think Todd Bowley's too busy and wouldn't want him on his football club because it's an American ownership model. So Todd Bowley might not be the right example.
He's got a few ideas.
What ideas? Come on.
Todd Bowley. He's reeling them off.
An all-star game. Come on. That's not an idea. That's not original, is it? It's bloody silly.
And others.
Right. And what? Changing the bottom four to being relegated so that you've got a competition so that 4 teams can get dragged into a relegation battle knowing that his team will never be one of them.
You're giving the Glazers a pass here.
I'm not giving them a pass because I think they've made a holics of it, both from a PR point of view. But let's ask the question, can Man United, and on the field point of view, can Manchester United afford to pay dividends? Yes, they can. Can they afford, from a PR point of view, the optics of it? Probably no, they can't. Do the Glazers give them monkeys? No, they don't. And who's going to make them give them monkeys? Not Man United Supporters Trust, I can assure you, because apparently 6 months ago they were in Last Chance Saloon.
Let me ask you then.
That's a big saloon now, isn't it? How big has this saloon got to be for its last chance?
What will make the Glazers, in your words, give a monkeys?
I imagine that a complete and utter collapse of the share price. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.